Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of the Gateways Musical Podcast. Today is this is the first segment on sound quality, tone quality, instrumentation, and voicing. And so essentially it's the first video on arranging. We're done with rhythm for now. We've gone over harmony, we've gone over rhythm, and now we're going to go into the arrangement of elements within a piece. Because oftentimes when you're arranging something, like everything that you want to convey with your musical piece has to be done through how it's arranged. And if it's not arranged properly to convey the emotion you want, then you're not going to get, the piece that you want to show to other people. So let's just start off with, like we did with the rhythm segment, in defining what exactly is timbre. Well, timbre is it's the tone, color, or maybe like tone quality, but it's the sound quality of a musical note, or like a sound. It distinguishes all the different genres of music from one another. There's a big difference in tone quality if you compare something like a choir, something like a barbershop quartet. Although they're both using, the human voice as an instrument, one will have a very different quality when compared to another. In this case, if the choir is singing according to 12-tone equal temperament, then they will have a certain tone color when they sing something like a seventh chord, in the rare chance that they do, if it's a contemporary choir. Normally they stick to more triadic harmony, right? Now, because of that, there are times when they won't get an impact called the ringing chord, in which the proper lock-in of vocals causes an overtone to appear, so like a fifth note in like a quartet that isn't actually being sung. And this happens in barbershop quartet because the person who's singing the seventh in a barbershop quartet actually sings it about 30 cents flat, and that's closer to what it would be in just intonation. And because of that, it makes like the next pitch in the overtone series, which are the overtone series. You have the fundamental, which is being the note that's being sung or played, and then there are basically a technical infinite number of notes above it that slowly decrease in volume, which is what actually produces timbre. For example, let's say you play a C on a piano, right? Well, you're not just hearing a C. That's false. Because if you just heard a flat C, every single sound would sound exactly the same if it was just a C, right? Now, the overtone series essentially works in that, you have a note, then you have its octave, right? Then you have its fifth, then you have, not the octave of the fifth, the octave of the root. So it's like if you have C, it goes C to octave C to G to C to E to G to B flat to C to D to E to F sharp to G to A to B flat to B natural to C. And those are the first 16 harmonics of playing the note C. And what distinguishes different sounds from one another is kind of like almost the volume of these harmonics in a sound. Like if you were to play a C on like a clarinet, right? I believe in a clarinet, the second or third, I think the second and the third harmonic are actually a lot quieter, Whereas if you played that same note on a guitar, like an electric guitar, it's not. It's more like a straight downward slope, so that kind of creates the differentiation between those two tones. If you're wondering where that example's from, Andrew Hong just recently released a video on the overtone series, and I remember that's an example that he brought up. You should go watch it if you're interested in going further into that. But basically, it's the things like the overtone series and the harmonic series that kind of generate what exactly timbre is, right? So, you know, like, how can I explain this? It's kind of mathematical, because the way it works, it's kind of like you have the original, you cut that in half, you get the second harmonic, about a third of that, you have the third, take about, you know, like, you take half of the second, you have the fourth, you take about, it's really hard to explain in math terms. Basically, there's it's a whole number multiples of the fundamental frequency. That's its exact. Oh yeah, so you have your fundamental frequency and the rate at which it travels, and then the second harmonic is that rate times 2. The third harmonic is that rate times 3. The fourth harmonic is that rate times 4, etc. And you can do that infinitely, and that's how you actually figure out what the different harmonics of a note are. You have to know its frequency and the rate at which it's vibrating. So that's kind of the basis of where timbre comes from, right? And if you understand that, then it helps explain a lot about tuning systems and why there are so many. Because one of the issues with something like 12-tone equal temperament, even though it's, you know, it's very versatile, lets you play everything in a ton of different keys, it isn't actually technically in tune. At the same time, it's impossible to remain perfectly mathematically in tune. This is a real thing. Like, basically, it's impossible for us to achieve a tuning system in which we are constantly mathematically in tune and never shift from that, like, tuning system. And here's the reasoning why, right? So you have 12-tone equal temperament. If 12-tone equal temperament followed the harmonic series, which is what is like, that's technically considered perfectly in tune, what would happen is, one, you'd have just intonation. That's kind of what just intonation is. But the problem with something like just intonation is that, let's say you were to go from C to its third harmonic, right? Its third harmonic, so you'd multiply that rate by 3, right? Boom. You have C's the mathematical ratio of C, multiply it by 3, boom, you have G. But in the case of something like 5-limit tuning, if you were wanting to get to G from a different note, it wouldn't be the same G. Like, for simplicity, let's say that G was 100 Hertz, right? Well, if you go from like C to G, it's 100 Hertz. But if you go from A to G, maybe, oh no, it's 101. You may think, oh, you know, 1 cent detuning isn't that bad. Well, that creates something called the comma effect, in which basically, if you tune to phylum just intonation, gives us syntonic comma, which was a problem that was brought forth by a musician about just intonation. What happens is you have a slow ascension in tune in like these different puzzles that he gave. where the people singing would slowly rise further up and up in the scale. And that's kind of why, like, you know, tuning systems will never get it perfect. It's called the cosmic joke for a reason. Anyway, going back to the topic at hand with timbre. Again, it's based off of like the harmonic and the overtone series. It's also based off of like envelope. And if you don't know what envelope is, it's like it's abbreviated only by ASDR, or attack, decay, sustain, release. The common controls on synthesizers, right? And basically what you can do is you can change the sound of something by altering these 4 aspects of it. Like if you increase the decay on a sound, 1, it becomes more difficult to identify the sound. And the reason why is because, like, you know, you would be able to tell a saxophone from a trumpet pretty easily, but the way that you normally end up doing that is based on the first, like, blast. So like the noise of a trumpet starting a note and the noise of a saxophone starting a note are very different from one another. But if you take that away with adding attack, it's not as easy to identify what exactly it is. And then, you know, you have release, the amount of time it takes for the sound to fade away. Sustain, like simply sustain is like how the note kind of holds itself. Decay is the movement from attack to sustain, etc., right? So all these things are very important for timbre. You can kind of call it brightness. It's like an analogy. It's like distinguishing between sounds. Like you have brighter and darker sounds. That's a timbre thing. And then from that, right, from this whole concept of timbre, like how a sound sounds, is where you get the concept of instrumentation and why we have different instrumentation. So as we know, timbre is basically generated by the overtone / harmonic series, right? Knowing that, you know, because that exists, things sound different. And that also means that certain things sound really good together, right? Makes sense. So that's why you have, you have entire concert bands, you have contemporary classical orchestras, you have like jazz quintets, you have barbershop quartets, you have, you know, a cappella groups with various ranges in them. You have like, you know, entirely synthesized piece, you have string quartets, you have string orchestras, big bands, whatever. You have all this stuff, and that's just because, you know, through like almost experimentation, we started to figure out, hey, these two sounds complement each other, so I'm going to put them together and see what happens. Like a fun fact, everyone knows string quartet. String quartet sounds wonderful because with a string quartet, sure, it's not as full as like a massive orchestra. At the same time, the sound is really powerful, right? So you have a string quartet, and you write a piece for string quartet. Well, did you think of maybe adding an accordion to it? Now, assuming you didn't, right? There are people who did. A guy by the name of David Bruce, he's a composer, worked with Adam Neely, a guy named Tantacruel, and Narisol. And basically he had them all write pieces based on themes and give it to this string quartet with an accordion. Now, like, I bet you think, oh, those things wouldn't sound that good together. Well, they actually did. They sounded pretty good. I mean, like, that's my personal opinion. You can go check it out, see for yourself if you enjoy it. But in my opinion, it sounded really pleasant. And why is that? Well, it's all part of instrumentation. You get different sounds based on different sounds that you put together. And it's also, that's linked a lot with like emotion and the message you want to get behind from your music. Like if you wanna make something that sounds really like sad and depressing, you know, what instruments come to mind? Well, you have like piano, strings definitely help. You have like things like harmonica, all that. But would you write that kind of piece for like a kazoo? Probably not, because it doesn't have the sound that you want to convey this kind of emotion. You wouldn't write it for like a slide whistle or whatever. No, there's no point. But at the same time, like if you're trying to write a piece that's just like consistently happy, then the tone you want on something like a trumpet, you'd want it to be brighter, because the brighter the tone, the kind of more open it sounds. If it's a really dark tone, then it's probably not what you want to convey this like happy-go-lucky emotion. And you know, we spent a lot of time talking about harmony, and we spent a lot of time talking about rhythm. Well, those things without, you know, sounds to complement them are virtually useless. Like if you have just, you know, if you're trying to create a piece that has an incredible harmonic environment, well, you're not going to make the whole thing on piano, because one, if you want to make like a dense harmonic environment, I'm talking like a 15 voicing thing. One, you don't have enough fingers for that. There's no way you'd be able to play like a 15 note chord with 10 fingers. You know, unless you manage to also play with your toes. But at the same time, like, just piano probably won't cut it. If you want it to be like a super ultra dramatic moment with a 15 note chord in a piece, well, maybe you'll want it to be like a choir. Maybe you want it to be like a brass section, big band style, like big massive chord. Maybe you want to be swelling strings. Maybe you want it to be like 40 pianos, I don't know, or like pianos and organs or whatever. But it's all dependent on what sound are you really going for, right? And then with other like things in instrumentation, it's all dependent on the sound you want, the meaning you want, the emotion you want, because all music is it's conveying life and emotion and feeling and thought in an auditory way, right? It's like an easy thing to equate timbre and instrumentation to is it's like a color palette, right? Timbre is the color itself, right? So you have your color. Let's say it's like a nice deep purple, right? So you have this color. It's a nice deep purple. You know, maybe there's a bit of a gradient into like a nice deeper shade of blue, whatever. So you have this color, and there's your timbre, because like I said, it's a tone color. So you have this visual representation of the color. The timbre is the auditory representation of a color, right? And then your color palette is like your instrumentation. Depending on the instruments / colors that you put together, it will make or break the piece you want, right? Like, if you're painting a night sky, you're probably not just gonna throw some random green in there, unless that's what you want, and you have a way of doing it. That's a different story. But like, if you were just to splash some neon green onto your painting without any reason, then it wouldn't look as nice, and it wouldn't convey the same emotions and meaning you want it to. It's a similar thing in music. If you're writing like a dramatic orchestral piece, and then you have a kazoo play a lead line, then it's not gonna make a lot of sense, unless you do it right. But if you, same way in like making a painting, if you know what sounds complement each other, if you know like how they complement each other, not only like harmonically but rhythmically, and how their tone, their color complements each one, then it just makes your pieces so much more meaningful. It conveys the emotions you want in a much more effective way. So, you know, that's why we're gonna go into this thing on tone and like instrumentation, voicing, whatever, because arrangement is very important to making a piece sound how you want. Now, arrangement should never be the first thing you do, because if arrangement is the first thing you do, you're gonna be stuck all the time, because like you write something really awesome and have it arranged, but then you have no idea where to take it because you didn't plan out your arrangement, like your piece beforehand. Bad idea. I recommend play your piece on like a piano, or like sing it, play rhythms on something, whatever it could be. It could be like your fingers against your desk. Who knows? Never straight up arrange your piece, because that will make it so much more difficult to continue making new things. So with that being said, I'm gonna call it for today. Thanks for listening. Good morning, afternoon, night, whatever time it is in the world. And yeah, goodbye.